Alright, ladies and gentlemen, let's make a start, shall we? So, stealth bombing. I'm sure many of you have been at the wrong end of one of these at some point in your EVE careers. If you are very new, count yourself lucky, and you should probably get yourself on one of Travis's fleets to experience being on the wrong end of one of these things. Wow.
Fucking rude.
So, stealth bombs. They're used by a special module in the game called a bomb launcher, and it can only be fit to one class of ship in the entire game, and that is the stealth bomber, which is a Tech 2 frigate. Many of you have probably seen or flown one at some point, but may not have been aware that they're the only class that can use this module. They're also unique to null security space, so stealth bombers, you can fly anywhere, whenever. The bomb launcher itself, you can only use in null sec. No low sec, no high sec, just null sec and wormhole space. If you try to activate it in high or low, it will just not let you do it, much like smart bombs in high sec, unless you're using a red safety. The good news for you all is its fitting requirement is not too severe as well. So you should be able to fit it on pretty much any bomber fit, although if you have poor skills or if you're especially new to the game, you may find that you have to end up offlining some other modules to get the bomb launcher to online. But on a typical bomber, you will have the spare high slot to do it. You should have 5 high slots in every bomber. That leaves you room for a bomb launcher. And the main strength of the stealth bomber is against large numbers, and you'll see that as we go through. There's multiple advantages which the bomb confers, which basically means it destroys entire fleets. You know, just from one tiny little frigate, which is quite nice. Now, unfortunately, it's not quite as simple as just launching a bomb, because there's several bomb types you have to pick from. Just like missiles or projectile ammo or hybrid ammo, you load it into the bomb launcher as an ammo type. The difference being is that you can't fit that many. You can fit 2 bombs in a single bomb launcher reload, or 3 in a Tech 2 bomb launcher module. There's 4 damage bombs, and those are the ones we're going to be dealing with today on a theory level. So as we can see here, there's 1 for each damage type. Obviously explosive, thermal, EM, and kinetic. Which one you pick will mostly depend on what targets you'll be engaging, rather than what your ship is bonused for, and again we'll be dealing with that later on. There is a lock breaking bomb, which upon exploding will break locks of nearby targets. It's not used that often, but can be used to good effect if used well. And there's also 2 further energy neutrine bombs, which drain the capacitor of the ships that they hit. One of these, the focused void bomb, does not have an area of effect. It's got a 0 meter AoE, which means it has to hit the ship directly to deal the capacitor drain effect, which means it's only used against capital ships. And of course, the bombers themselves, there are 4, 1 for each race. Each bomber gets a particular bonus to a damage type for both torpedoes and bombs. As we can see here, the Galene favour thermal, the Caldari kinetic, the Amar favour EM, and the Minmatar favour explosive. However, you may not fit the bomb that suits your race's bonus, depending on your fleet, and again that will be explained shortly. The actual fits on your bomber will vary, the reason being each bomber has different CPU and power grid and different medium slots and low slots. So for example, the Hound's got 3 mid slots and 3 low slots, whereas something like the Nemesis has 4 mid slots and 2 low slots. So exact things will vary. However, there is one golden rule when flying a stealth bomber, regardless of whether or not you're launching a bomb, and that is you must have the Tech 2 Covert Ops cloak. If you have not got one of those, or you cannot use it yet, you do not fly a stealth bomber. You do not bomb. It's as simple as that. That cloak is your lifesaver. And I'm not talking about the Tech 1 version. Don't think you can skimp on ISK and use the Tech 1. It doesn't do the same thing. The Tech 2 Covert Ops cloak lets you warp cloaked in a stealth bomber. There is no other module in the game that will let you do this. And it is unique to stealth bombers and a handful of other ships, such as the Covert Ops frigates and recon ships, and some Tech 3 cruisers. Now, with bombs, there are 4 golden rules, as I like to call them. Other people might disagree with the exact number or how it's phrased, but if you remember these 4 key things, that dictates the entirety of stealth bomb work. Everything you do in a stealth bomber when bombing hostiles come from these 4 rules. So it's important to remember each one. The first one is how the module actually works. So you're out in space, you've loaded your bomb into the launcher, you're ready to go, you hit the button, and what happens? Well, with a normal module, like torpedoes or with guns, obviously you try and hit the locked target, wherever it may be around you. Bombs ignore this completely. You hit that button for the bomb launcher in space, and the bomb will fire in a straight line from where your ship is pointing. It doesn't matter what you have locked, it doesn't matter what's locking you, it doesn't matter where you're what you've selected on, what you've clicked on, it will just go in a straight line from your ship model. And the damage bombs, which again are the main ones you'll be using, they will travel for 30 kilometers in that straight line. They will not turn, they don't stop early, they don't continue past that, they explode at the 30-kilometer mark from when you hit the button. And this takes 12 seconds for them to do. And again, that can't be changed. That 12 seconds is static. If you want to see in advance where your bomb will explode based on where your ship is, the in-game tactical overlay, which some of you may already know about, you can press Ctrl and D in space to move it up. If you hover your mouse over the module, the bomb launcher module in space, it will show you a red circular area of effect where if you were to click the button now, that is where your bomb will end up exploding. For obvious reasons, that's awesome. And somebody has asked a question. So, if there's no AoE on the focused void bomb, does the bomb literally have to hit the hull? Yes. Essentially what will happen is, because there's no AoE, the bomb has to land within 0 meters of that ship. Which is again why it's only used against capital ships. It is nigh on impossible to hit anything else in the game with a focused void bomb. Super capitals and titans are prime targets for that. So, bombs go straight. That's rule number 1. How hard can it be? Well, it turns out it's a little harder, because bombs don't care what happens when they blow up. So a bomb does not distinguish between friend or foe when it explodes. This is all bomb types: damage, lock breaking, neutralizing. It will hit everything in its radius when it explodes. As we can see here, that is included but not limited to enemies, friendlies, your own fleet, you, drones, bubbles, and other cloaked ships. The only exception, as I've stated here, is ships under the gate cloak. So when you jump into a system, you're obviously cloaked until you move, or for, I believe it's 30 or 60 seconds. Bombs cannot affect you in that time. All AoE effects do not affect you. The moment you decloak from your gate timer, though, you are fair game for all area of effect damage effects, like bombs. So, bombing friendlies is a real possibility. In that 12 seconds it takes for the bomb to travel, anything could happen. It is important to be aware of your surroundings when you initiate a bomb run. Those of you who fought in World War B will remember the many, many times Test proved that to us. How nice of them. Rule number 3. Bombs do not explode if the launching ship is dead. So if you die after launching your bomb before the bomb blows up, you have achieved nothing. Your bomb just disappears. It's gone. Waste of time. Why were you even flying? Thus, the best counter to bombs, more often than not, is to kill the ship that launches them before the bomb goes off. Good examples of this are fast-locking ships like interceptors and swiftballs. So if you're bombing a fleet that contains those, you need to be very careful. However, you have one saving grace. Once you have launched your bomb, you do not need to stay where you are. You can warp out and the bomb will still hit. So your best defense as a bomber is to get off the grid as soon as you launch your bomb. For that reason, warp disruption bubbles should be avoided where possible, as if you launch your bomb inside a warp disruption bubble, you will find yourself unable to warp out and easy prey for other ships. Bombers, being frigates, have very little tank, and bombers more so than others. You will die if you are caught. And finally, rule number 4, before we go on to some questions that come up. Bombs have hit points. They can be destroyed mid-flight. However, it's not quite as easy as it would first appear. Bombs cannot be targeted directly. You cannot lock them in space like you can drones or ships. As a result, direct fire weapons like missiles and other drones and stuff like that can't destroy bombs. There's no way to do it. But indirect fire can. So the main examples of this are smart bombs, which are AoE effects around your ship. Those are different modules. They are not bombs. Smart bombs are not the same thing as bombs. Point defense systems from citadels, so bombing stuff on a citadel usually doesn't work too well. And other bombs will destroy bombs, and this is a key point we need to remember for the next few slides. Before we do, however, we've got a question about your ship aligning to the horizontal plane. No, there is no easy way to keep your ship locked in a non-horizontal position, aside from deliberately slowing your ship down to like a meter a second or something, and I'll explain how to do that in a second. So if you stop your ship dead, your ship resets to horizontal. You've all seen it out in space. You stop on a gate or on a citadel, your ship just resets to the horizontal. That means if you were to launch a bomb, it would go horizontal. In order to avoid that, you need to keep speed up. Any speed. The game just basically determines any speed is going in a direction and doesn't reset your ship. So as a result, what you want to do there is you can manually click your speedometer at the bottom of your screen, and you can set a speed by clicking in that speedometer. So you can set a very low speed, so you're effectively not moving very far while still maintaining a direction. Will bombs detonate if they collide with a ship? No. Bombs ignore any collidable objects, including ships, stations, citadels, gates, planets. They go through planets. Don't ask me how that works. But no, the only thing that will affect a bomb is if it's reached the 30-kilometer mark or an AoE effect that destroys the bomb. There is nothing else that will cause it to detonate early. And bombs destroying other bombs, ladies and gentlemen, are the key point here. Because after those 4 rules, we can now deviate the bombing limits. So it is not possible to just launch 100 different bombs at the target and own everything at once, because bombs destroy other bombs that are in their area of effect. However, we have an advantage here. Every bomb in the game, every damage bomb, has a default native resist profile to its own damage type. So the example here is a Scorch Bomb, which deals thermal damage, has a 99.8 resist bonus to thermal damage. So what this means is that a thermal bomb, a Scorch Bomb, hitting another Scorch Bomb does not immediately destroy it. Whereas if a Shrapnel Bomb, explosive, were to hit a Scorch Bomb, it would destroy it. So if you launch a bomb wave, you need to launch them all in the same damage type. And this is why earlier on, I did mention that regardless of your ship's bonus to a particular damage type, you will fit your bomb type depending on your FC, what your fleet commander tells you to bring. So it doesn't matter if you're in a Nemesis with a Scorch Bomb bonus, if the FC asks you to bring Shrapnel Bombs with explosive damage, you bring Shrapnel Bombs. That is non-optional. I can't stress this enough. If you bring the wrong damage type to a bombing fleet and launch your bomb, you risk destroying everybody else's bombs before they explode. The resist profile means 7 bombs is the maximum we can get away with being hit at once. Past that, the bombs will start destroying each other as they explode. So a typical bomb wing will consist of 7 bombers. Or bomb squad, it's also referred to. It is possible to overlap the bomb explosions without hitting the bombs themselves to increase this number, and I'll show you an example of that a little later on. That's more advanced. But in general, 7 bombs at once is the rule of thumb, guys. If you want to take bombers out yourself, run it in squads of 7. Is the bomb damage instant or does it linger? It's instant. All the damage is dealt at once. So bomb explodes, everybody gets damaged. And yes, take the bomb type specified by your bombing commander or your fleet commander. Don't bring the one for your ship, or you kill your own bombing run, and everybody gets very sad and annoyed. Now, the damage itself, it is instantaneous, but it is not always maximum damage. So bombs themselves will deal 6,400 damage. That's obviously before resists or anything. This is then increased if your ship has a bonus to the damage type, and the default bonus is 5% per covert ops level, and you need covert ops to a reasonably high standard to make use of that. So potentially you get 25% bonus to that damage if you've got covert ops trained to 5, which you may not do. So if we take that 6,400 damage, this is negated by the resist of the ships, of course. So if you're fighting against, let's say a shield fleet, they've got native high explosive resist, which means shrapnel bombs will not do as much damage as they normally would. And again, this is part of picking your bombs before you go out, and this is something your fleet commander will usually decide if they've got an idea on what they are going to bomb. Otherwise, as a general rule, shrapnel, explosive damage, and EM damage are the best ones to take as a rule of thumb, unless there's a specific target you've got in mind. Now, unfortunately for us, after ship resists, there's one further mitigating factor for the damage, and that's the signature radius of the ship being hit. So when the bomb explodes, big bada boom, everything inside it takes less damage if they've got a smaller signature radius. So for example, frigates, destroyers, even some cruisers have really small signature radiuses, so they will take much less damage from a bomb explosion. But there are ways in which we can increase that to our advantage. So if the enemy ships are target painted, or if they've got shield extenders on, which increase signature radius, or if they've got a micro warp drive active, which is a 500% increase to signature radius, that's huge. The bomb will deal more damage up to 6,400, which is the maximum. So prime bomb targets are micro warp driving ships, essentially. If you can hit a ship with a micro warp drive on, you're more or less guaranteed to deal full damage. For that reason, if you're flying a bomber, you want to be keeping an eye out for ships using a micro warp drive. If they're using an afterburner, obviously not the same thing. It increases their speed, but doesn't affect bomb damage. There are also ways in which people can negate bomb damage they take. The big example here being gang links. There is a particular fleet boost that reduces signature radius. We use it quite a lot in Horde, where there's risk of bombs. And sometimes they can improve survivability from a full bomb wave to 2 or 3 bomb waves. The damage itself, Rabble, is indeed dealt with full damage in the 15 kilometer sphere. So you could be 14 kilometers from the bomb and take as much damage as the guy at 0. The damage does not fall off over that 15 kilometer radius. Fortunately for us, we'll be long gone by then. But yes, everybody takes the same amount of damage, obviously before taking into account signature radius. Drone micro warp drive. Drones, while they have a small signature radius, have very little HP. I believe a drone micro warp drive does negatively impact their survival from bombs, but I'm going to be honest, this isn't something that has been tested much. I actually had a bit of a look into this before the class, and I couldn't find much on it. So in all honesty, I'm not entirely sure exactly how it interacts, but I will say 1 or 2 bombs will kill a drone. Straight up. Drones are extremely susceptible to bombing damage due to their low health, even if they've got small signature radius. Fighters as well. Fighters take a lot of damage from bombs. Does ship velocity mitigate bomb damage like it does with missiles? It does not, no. So signature radius, we share the same weakness as missiles. Smaller the signature radius, the less damage. Speed is irrelevant. You could be going 3,000 meters a second with an afterburner, and you take the same damage as a stationary ship with bombs. Speed does not count in any way. Which is obviously quite bad for afterburner pilots, because they turn on the afterburner thinking they're more safe. They're not. It doesn't do a damn thing. In terms of raw signature radius, it's a good assumption that anything battleship sized will take full damage because of their extremely high signature radius. So battleships, while they've got high tank, they're generally good targets for high amounts of bomb waves. So if you've got 20 to 30 bombers, battleship fleets are good targets. Battle cruisers have a decently high signature radius, so unless they're specifically linked or implanted, they will take full damage from bombs as well. Cruisers, it gets a bit tricky depending on the cruiser class. Tech 3 cruisers, for example, can be a pain because they've got high tank. So yes, bombing frigates, usually a bad idea. Bombing battleships, on the other hand, very hard to go wrong. Now, it's all well and good knowing how the bomb works, but you've actually got to bomb something sooner or later. Theory isn't everything. So we have the bomb run. Think of it like the trench run on the Death Star, but with a much smaller explosion at the end of it. So, your bomb goes in a straight line for 30 kilometers, which means you want to be about 30 kilometers away from your target before you start your run. Obviously, with a 15-kilometer explosion radius on the bomb, you've got a little bit of leeway, so, do remember that going in. You'll be generally set up in advance on the target. You'll be cloaked, of course. You're in a stealth bomber, you're always cloaked. Your start warp-in will, in a fleet fight, usually be done by your commander, your fleet commander or your bomb commander, who will usually have a probe launcher, and they will be positioning you in a decent place to begin your run. Alternatively, you can do things like gate camping, station camping, or if you're fighting on a grid like the Keep Star, or somewhere at 7RM or GME, you might have bookmarks set up. You can use them as well. Easy peasy. Once you're within range of your target, you start approaching your target, so your ship is moving. And at this point, once you are moving and your ship is pointing in the right direction, at that point is when you decloak. So you approach the target, you get moving, then you decloak. The moment you decloak, you hit your bomb launcher button. You don't give the enemy time to react. The moment they see you on overview, your bomb is en route. As soon as you launch that bomb, you are warping out. You are getting off that grid as soon as humanly possible. You stay there too long, you're a dead bomber. Your bomb does nothing, everybody laughs at you, and you feel terrible. So obviously, since we're moving at speed, and we need to warp out, we don't want to warp out to something behind us, because then our ship has to stop, turn around, and warp. And even though you're in a frigate, stealth bombers are pretty slow. They're not that agile. So the best kind of bomb runs have something behind the target you can warp out to, as close to a straight line as you can. This means there's no align time. You click the button and you warped immediately. Your ship doesn't have to stop and turn. This isn't always possible. There are fleet fight scenarios when it will not be easy to get a warp out point behind the target, or to be able to position yourselves in that way. So sometimes you've just got to make the best that you can do. Now, when you warp out, that will be done by you, the pilot. So your FC will help you get in position, but the bomb and the warp out, that's all you. You are responsible for getting your own ship to safety. Will decloaking happen on the bomb run setup? Only after the approach, so you wait for the approach. And there was another question as well about decloaking. So when you are cloaked, any object within 2,500 meters, 2.5 kilometers, will decloak you. However, cloaked ships are not affected by this. Oh, sorry, cloaked ships don't trigger this to other cloaked ships, I should clarify. So if you're all together cloaked, you don't decloak each other. But if one person decloaks, and he's within 2.5 kilometers of something else, you'll get decloaked. And then that pilot decloaks somebody else, and yes. So you do not decloak until you are told, approach and bomb. If you cloak before that point, you decloak your entire fleet, you're not in position, everybody panics, you lose a lot of bombers. And those of you who have fought with Horde for the last couple of months will remember multiple times it will well be where this happens. And of course, when it happened against us and we saw a bunch of goon bombers appearing out of nowhere, it was very funny for us because we got a lot of free bomber kills. So don't be that guy. If you're in a bomber, you stay cloaked at all times, right up until the moment you need to drop your bomb. Do not decloak early. I do apologize, Cole. Yes, sorry. Decloak range is 2,000 meters. I had a bit of a derp. I was confusing it with jump range. Decloak range is 2,000 meters, 2 kilometers, not 2.5.
Is using target painters an overkill?
Depends on the target. Usually, if you are in a bomb run, you will not use target painters, but it's an example of something that can increase signature radius. Because if you are target painting the target long enough for the bomb to land, you're probably dead. So in general, you won't be using target painters, but stuff being target painted by other people is a pretty good target to hit.
Makes sense.
Real question. Oh, sorry.
Is bomb the order to decloak? It depends on the FC. So most often the FC will say, okay, that's the target, and they'll broadcast something for you, or they'll point it out on comms. Can you see that maelstrom belonging to pilot A, B, C? And once everybody says, yes, we see it, yes, it's there, we can see the broadcast to align to, or whatever it might be, the FC will usually at that point say, okay, approach, decloak, bomb. And there you go, you're away. So it depends slightly depending on the FC. If you're not sure, ask them in advance. But yes, they will usually just say, there's the target, approach, decloak, bomb. You decloak, you bomb, you walk the hell out. Easy peasy.
TGL, can I ask a quick question? Sorry, just I don't think my questions are going through on the submit form. So what
they
would you?
are. I can see them. I was holding them till later.
Great. Okay, you're smart. Okay, fine.
Right. So after your bomb run, so you've decloaked, you've launched a bomb, you've walked out. What now? Well, you've got to reload. You have a slight recloak delay, so it's, I believe, 15 seconds by default. So 15 seconds after you decloak, you can't reactivate your cloaking module. That right there is the best time to reload your bomb launcher, because you cannot reload when you are cloaked. So your best time to do it is then and there. That way you never need to decloak up until your next bomb run. As soon as that's done, or as soon as possible, you reactivate your cloak module. Get yourself cloaked. A decloaked bomber is a dead bomber. And once all that's sorted out, you will then be regrouping with the rest of your fleet, the rest of your squad. This is usually assigned in advance. So there might be a safe spot you've all got bookmarked, or there might be a celestial you walk to at range. Somewhere where your squad commander or your fleet commander knows he can pick you up with a squad warp. Because you're all cloaked, he can't see you. So he's got to rely on you being there. You may all have different warp out points. You most often will. But there will be a point where you regroup in preparation for the next run. If you are ever unsure on this, ask your fleet commander well ahead of time. And as always, stay cloaked. Don't decloak. Now that's a normal bomb run. So you see the target, you align to the target, you bomb, you warp out. But that's not the only kind of bombing we have available to us. I mentioned earlier it was possible to overlap bomb effects on a target whilst not having the bombs themselves be hit. This is called mass bombing. And it's a way to transcend the 7 bomber limit we saw earlier. So as we can see on this handy diagram I've got here, you can position your bombs in such a way where the area of effect covers a single target or single fleet without the bombs themselves being affected. Meaning that each of those black circles there could be 7 bombs at once. Meaning that poor fleet in the middle just got hit by 21 bombs. And that's a pretty good way to murder an entire fleet.
That kind of sucks for them.
However, this is obviously quite advanced because you won't just be pointing your ship at what you're trying to bomb and bombing. You will need to position everybody in advance in such a way where people are bombing potentially into empty space to overlap the bomb effects on the target. So this is quite tricky to pull off. I would not advise attempting this if you're a new bomber FC. Stick with the basics, get to know how it all works. Even I would think twice about arranging something like this, because you've got to have 3 groups of people minimum. Well, you can do this with 2 groups, but as an example, 3 groups. And you've got to have them all cloaked round a target, all knowing exactly where they're going to bomb, and you can't see where any of them are because they're all cloaked. So you've got to organize it all in your head and on voice comms with everybody else. So it's difficult to pull off, but when it does, you know, I've seen 150-man fleets go down to, you know, 30, 40 bombers doing this. It's insane what you can pull off if you do this right. And this is essentially the end game of stealth bombing. You consistently pull off stuff like this, and you've made it as a bombing FC. You are the master, as it were. And of course, the pilots themselves need to be good at what they do. You need to be able to listen to what the FC says, and you need to know where to bomb. Would it be possible at FF? You mean friendly fire expendable targets, Tom? Was that?
Yep.
Sometimes, yes. So there are scenarios when you bomb an enemy fleet where you might hit friendlies. It can be avoided from time to time, particularly if there's fast tackle in the enemy fleet. So yes, sometimes this can happen. I would not, where possible, avoid friendly fire for obvious reasons. I mean, think of how annoyed you'd be if you were in a hurricane fleet and everybody in the fleet started shooting you.
Yeah. So what I wanted to align with that question was, so we have a core target and we have some fast tackle on the outskirts of the fight while the core target is focused on the main fleet. Would it be, I mean, this would be purely a tactics question. Fast tackle is obviously pretty expendable. You know, like wing 1, focus this guy, wing 2, bomb this guy, wing 3, bomb this guy.
So,
and you're basically using the fast tackle as targets to align your core that you're trying to kill.
that is one way in which you can arrange a mass bombing attempt. So Rex, or using friendly fleet members as essentially targets to organize where people are bombing. Yes, it can absolutely be done. The advantage of frigates as well is they can usually get out at the blast radius before the bomb hits, but of course they might be killed by the enemy fleet first. So it's not something I would rely upon as a tactic. However, it is an option if you're trying to coordinate this kind of thing, but there are usually better ways to do it.
I didn't think about Rex. That makes a better idea.
Yeah, Rex, drones on field, there's all sorts of things. In an actual battlefield, if you're doing this in a big fleet fight as opposed to on a gate or something, then yes, you use what you can make good of on the field. Obviously, if you're gate camping with bombers, say you're camping a warp bubble on a gate so they don't land in jump range when they come out of warp, wink wink, nudge nudge, you can obviously assemble all this well in advance. You could put cans around where the enemy fleet are going to warp in, so you know exactly where you're bombing. So there's all sorts of tips and tricks you can do to do this effectively. There's a lot more questions coming up, so we'll just go to the next slide, which is a quick review, and then I'll go through all the questions now coming up. So really, guys, that's more or less all there is to it. It's a lot simpler than it might have first appeared for some of you, and I'm sure some of you think it's a lot more complicated than it first appeared. But you remember these key points and you can't go wrong. So you stay cloaked all the time, except when you're right up until the bomb. A decloaked bomber is a dead bomber after all. You make sure you take the bomb damage type your squad commander or fleet commander asks for. If you take the wrong one, you ruin the entire run. Don't be that guy. Nobody wants to be that guy. When launched, the bomb, by default for a damage bomb, void breaker and lock breaker long bombs are slightly different, will travel 30 kilometers in 12 seconds and explodes in a 15-kilometer radius. The damage that the bomb does to everything within that sphere is based on the target's signature radius, not the speed, their signature radius. And of course, a dead bomber's bomb does nothing. You need to bomb and get out as quick as you can. And finally, under normal conditions, 7 bombs are the max you want at once, unless you are trying to pull off what we saw in the last slide, in which case you can sometimes get away with more, but that's a lot more difficult to pull off. And of course, after you've done your successful bombing run, you get some testimonials. Your parents will think you're awesome, you think you're awesome, the main Horde fleet thinks you're awesome, your FC thinks you're awesome, you're generally awesome. Because you just murdered 200 maelstroms with 20 people. So you do it right, and you decimate everything in sight. Do it wrong, and you're just another kill mail. So, there's a bunch of questions coming up. We'll start going through them. I apologize for the people who've had them waiting. I've been holding them for more appropriate time. So, if dealing with smart bombing ships, what's the best approach? Right. Obviously, bombs can be destroyed by by smart bombs, I should say. However, smart bombs have a very small area effect, a couple of kilometers at most. If you notice there are enemy ships smart bombing, you can usually just slightly tweak your bombing target so that the bomb lands outside of the smart bombs but still hits everything within it. Remember, your bomb's got a 15-kilometer explosion radius. Smart bombs have maybe a third of that.
So just basically have it kind of have the area of effect glance off the bulk of the fleet in order to
Precisely,
catch.
precisely. However, it's rare you'll be in a scenario where enemy smart bombs are covered enough to stop stealth bombers coming in. Most of the time, smart bombs will be leveraged in what we call a firewall against enemy missile ships, which means they'll usually be all clustered on one side of the enemy fleet. And even that in itself is pretty rare.
So I've just noticed CO2 use it with the rupture fleets. They have smart bombs.
Yes, CO2 runs smart bombs.
Yeah,
so yeah, you want to run.
Good to know.
Yeah, you can outrange enemy smart bombs essentially with your bomb explosion radius. So use that to your advantage. What's a good bomber FC ship? Now, this is the million-dollar question for many wannabe bomber FCs. So it depends on how many people you've got. If you are leading a bomber fleet, I will say this: you must have a probe launcher, combat probes. Particularly in a heavy fleet engagement, you are useless if you cannot warp your bombers close to the targets. So, what I usually say is this: if you only have a few bombers, as an FC, take a bomber yourself. Okay? And you gimp the fit, you have to gimp the fit a little bit to fit a probe launcher and a bomb launcher. So typically you won't fit torpedoes or anything as the FC. You'll fit maybe a micro warp drive, a bomb launcher. In fact, if you're in game, I can actually link you the one I use. I've linked it in the fleet. But you would fit a combat probe launcher and a bomb launcher yourself so you can participate in the bomb run.
Cheers, thanks for that, too.
Now, if you have a critical mass of bombers, so you would be useless yourself bombing, I recommend a covert ops frigate, which is the other Tech 2 frigate available. It also warps cloaked, it uses the same covert ops cloaking device, but it gets a bonus to probe strength and to fitting probe launchers. So that's obviously a lot better to position people. You won't go on the bomb runs yourself, you'll use squad warps to position people, and then, go back and do another group.
Alright, thanks. That answers my question pretty much perfectly.
Is stealth bombing used in pocket defense? It absolutely is used in pocket defense, yes, and I suspect the reason many of you are here to start using it in pocket defense. So, obviously, if you're camping a gate with bombers and you've got a warp disruption bubble on that gate and the enemy fleet lands in it on the way into your pocket, they're all outside of jump range, and what's that? You've got 14 bombers all cloaked at perfect positions to bomb them when they come in. Yes, they are absolutely used for pocket defense, especially when paired with warp disruption bubbles on gates to catch people. Against single targets, I would not recommend it, however, simply because bombs are obviously more effective against large fleets. If you plan to use stealth bombs for pocket defense, I strongly suggest that you set up bookmarks on gates in advance at 30-kilometer perches, stuff like that, and that you've got bookmarks on grid to warp out to. So you're not reliant on warping to a planet or an asteroid belt to warp off. You can use a bookmark you've already got there and then. In fact, pocket defense is one of the best places to learn this because you've got all the advantages. You can set up in advance, you can put bookmarks down, you know what's coming in, you've got the cards in your hand, as opposed to a fleet battle where there's a lot more unknowns. If you walk to someone cloaked, will you decloak them and yourself by accident? If you walk to them at 0, no. So, well, it depends, actually. If you are both cloaked, you cannot decloak each other. Even if you are right on top of each other, nothing will happen. You won't even know you're there because cloaked ships don't appear. But if either of you are decloaked and you walk to each other and you go within 2,000 meters, whoever is cloaked will be decloaked. Yes. So when bombing, like I said, remain cloaked whenever possible. You don't want that to happen. It's worth reiterating as well, when setting up a bomb run, you need to be wary of stuff like wrecks and drones and other ships that may decloak you. You've got to go about 30 kilometers from your target. That's quite close for some fleets. So be cautious of debris on the battlefield. If you get decloaked early, you may die. Besides the racial damage bonus, are there preferred racial bonuses bombers for bombing runs? It's mostly up to personal preference and your skills which bomber you fly. Now, I personally prefer the Hound, and I prefer the Hound because it's a little bit more agile, and I like using shrapnel bombs. I find they're a much better rule of thumb bomb to take. But in terms of preferred racial bombers, not really. It's mostly dependent on the pilots. So when I ask for bombers, for example, if I send out a call for bombers for a fleet, I will say, I need bombers, bring shrapnel bombs. And those are explosive bombs, which means if you can fly a Hound, bring a Hound. But if you can't fly a Hound, you just bring whichever one you've got skills or a ship ready for. It's entirely your choice. I know some people prefer the Manticore and Nemesis because they've got 4 mid slots, which if you're doing hot drops with torpedoes in a bomber is much better because you can fit another target painter or something like that. But in terms of bombing, no, it's entirely personal preference. Hope that answered that. If not, let me know. Can bombs be boosted by those fancy new Tech 3 destroyers? Yes, they can. And I think they're Tech 2 destroyers. But anyway, so there is a particular class of ship in the destroyer line that can fit what we call a boost module. And for those of you who don't know what that is, a boost module is an area of effect micro jump field generator. And what that means is when the destroyer pilot activates it, it spools up for about 6 seconds or something, and everything within a 6-kilometer radius of that ship is jumped forward 100 kilometers in the direction the ship was facing, the original boosting ship. Bombs are affected by this, so a bomb within 6 kilometers of a boosting ship will go with it that 100 kilometers and then keep flying in the original direction that it was going before the boost, essentially. It's just teleported in a line one way or another. This usually kills the boosher, by the way, if he manages to boost an entire bomb run. But it can be done, and we've actually had some discussions about doing this to good effect.
That's kind of OP.
However, obviously, you've got 12 seconds in which to boost a bomb, and you've got, 6 seconds to spool up on the micro jump drive. It's incredibly difficult to pull off on purpose. But yes, it can be done, is the answer to your question. How you want to use that to your advantage? Well, I'll let you figure that out. There are interesting ways you could use it, but very, very tricky to do. Bombs are the same damage at 12 kilometers or 2 kilometers? Yes. So anything within that 15-kilometer radius of a bomb explosion takes the same damage. The only thing that negates that is the ship's own resists and the ship's signature radius. A ship at 14 kilometers takes the same pre-resist damage and pre-signature damage as one at 0. Which is pretty nice, all things considered. And last question I currently have, so feel free to submit more if you have them. When can you take us out for a bombing practical fleet or bombing run? As soon as I find the time, is the short answer to that question. I've been rather busy at the moment, I just found the time to put this class on. However, as always with Horde guys, anybody can step up an FC, anybody can lead fleets. If you want to set up 8 guys, 4 guys, 2 guys, and go out in bombers and just generally fuck shit up, absolutely do it. Go for it. Do it right now. If you like, after this class, get a whole bunch of people and just go nuts. Go camp a gate. Go bomb random fleets out in nullsec. Go nuts.
Yeah, just on that, guys, just to let you know, I'm going to be trying to do this in the pocket within the next couple of days, practice runs, and my ideal goal is that we'd have a few people in the pocket who can like work wings and do basic bombing FCing, so we're not reliant on just one person. So we'll be doing that. We'll be trying to train like bomb stationary targets at first, and then like actually set up on gates and practice runs and stuff. So
Now,
I'll post the ops, but yeah.
bombs cost a couple of million ISK each, so obviously it's up to you how often you want to practice bomb runs. There is an in-game channel called Horde Bombers, and I forgot to put it in the class because I'm terrible. That's Horde Space Bombers, and in general, if you're looking for bombers, I would ask in there first, because the guys in there generally know what they're doing, or they've been in one of my classes, and they know the basics of bomb fundamentals. So yeah, Horde Bombers is the in-game channel. There's a mailing list linked in that channel. Feel free to ask about in there if you need some guys. So I will take you out as and when I find the time. Otherwise, feel free to do it yourselves, gents. There's nothing stopping you. You are your own men and or women. Now, after all that, does anybody else have any further questions? Anything you're not sure on? Now's the best time to ask. In-game or on Horde Square? Feel free to ask away. I suspect many of you are already fitting your ships for a go at that pesky Stargate.
The only question I have is, how are you financially in the game?
Me? Financially? Pass.
I'll make a donation. Thanks for all the information on this.
Not a problem. You absolutely don't have to.
It's something I'd like to do.
For reference, so guys, the slides that you've seen today on Horde Square will remain on Horde Square for your own review. So if you want to look over anything you've seen today, just check it out whenever. I will run classes at a later date and time. I believe there will be a recording of this put online. And of course, if you have questions at any other point, feel free to let me know. I'm on Discord pretty much all the day. Or you can obviously find me in-game when I'm online and have a chat.